Right, let's get started. Now, it was a successful superdelegates vote which saw Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia sweep the vote with a landslide victory. In case you missed it, here's how things unfolded. All right, so all together, the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, came up tops with 629 of the 955 odd votes available. Second was Kennedy Agyapong with 132 votes. In third place was Alan Chermanting with 95 of the votes available. And Dr. Owusu Ifriye Akoto came in fourth with 36 votes. Now, it got interesting for the fifth slot because the next two candidates or aspirants actually came in with equal numbers of votes, 9 votes each to Adainimo and Kobby Mensah, which means there is now contention about which of those two takes the fifth slot. So the party is in the process of resolving the fifth, which ended in a tie. While all that is going on, they have been addressing concerns emerging from the vote. Alexander Afenyo-Markin has been speaking at a news conference not so long ago.
Fraternity, the NPP, for the diverse role played by them in ensuring a successful election that took place 26th of August 2023. The Saturday elections we had. We also commend the Electoral Commission, the Ghana Police Service, for collaborating with the party in ensuring that we had a good day. We thank also the aspirants, their agents, media, and the public for the support we received. Now, it is important for us to state that this is a family affair. We've set down rules of engagement, and we've also put in place a mechanism to ensure that grievances are heard and responses given. We therefore expect that all aspirants who have grievances will channel said grievances through the laid down rules. We as the elections committee have this mandate to look into all matters of concern. We therefore call on agents, assigns, and the principals themselves to respect such rules. We understand that elections can sometimes trigger emotions, but in all of these, prudence expects of us to act within the confines of the law. Any party member, any aspirant, any agent who would make it his own bona fide of waging war against the party will be sanctioned. And by saying war against the party, I specifically mean that no member should make it a point to attack any member, any leading member, any leader, merely for disagreeing with a particular matter, or merely because there is a serious infringement which he or she thinks is not right. all said concerns should be challenged.
Now, of particular interest to many Ghanaians is the decision of the party to refer some 6 individuals to the disciplinary committee over some acts that the party deems were in breach of the guidelines of its constitution. So let's have a look. One of these people, Kennedy Agyapong. We also have Hopeson Adorye, Musa Sulemana, Charles Dochiao Ado, and Raphael Patrick Sappho. These are 5 of the 6 who have been referred to the disciplinary committee for various reasons. We have seen videos of Kennedy Agyapong speaking on the phone. We've seen videos of Hopeson Adorye speaking to the press. And all of these are connected to allegations made of malpractice. And so we will be bringing you a news conference this afternoon, details of which we will be sharing with you. But before we get to all of those, Nana Yaojima has a report capturing the reaction of one of the persons invited to the disciplinary committee hearing. We'll bring you that report shortly. But before that, we can hear now from Kennedy Agyapong. All right, now, before we go for those reports, let's do a bit of analysis. Dr. Kobby Mensah is a political marketing expert. He joins us right now. Professor Mensah, it's a pleasure to have you. Good afternoon.
Thank you, and good to see you.
Indeed.
Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure. Now, this disciplinary action being brought against these 6 individuals are circling around the issue of malpractice during these this election that happened over the weekend. Let's walk through them one by one. In the case of Kennedy Agyapong, first of all, this is not the first time that Kennedy Agyapong has found himself, being queried for behavior. But what is your take in terms of the political impact of this on his campaign?
Well, I think that prior to these elections, I mean the superdelegate election, when Kennedy had declared, his intention to run, many people were actually surprised because people felt that his pronouncements, people felt that his sometimes his discourses in the public domain were not, so to speak, presidential enough. And so they questioned his character. And so when this particular tape came out, of course, it sort of affirmed people's, thoughts that indeed his pronouncement, his temperament were not those that are actually deemed presidential. And so I think the implication is that, or the effect on his campaign is that, apart from his diehard support, and of course, apart from the NPP support, there are so many people who would actually question whether he indeed, qualifies to be a presidential candidate. So that's the implication of that.
Now, in truth, if indeed Kennedy Agyapong is found to have breached the electoral regulations, that in some cases would be grounds for disqualification. Do you think the political party, bearing in mind the general belief that the party does have some sort of allegiance to establishment, do you believe that they will have the, shall I call it guts, to disqualify Kennedy Agyapong if he is found to have breached the regulations of this election?
I actually doubt if they would disqualify him. In fact, any hard-handed, disciplinary, procedures that they would put him through would be or would have dire consequences, I suspect, especially given that he had proven, that indeed he's a force to reckon with. I think that the disciplinary committee would have one side of their eyes looking at that particular impact. And then, of course, should also be seen taking action, so that it can actually prevent, further, issues going forward into November. I think that they would have to broaden their scope, because obviously Kennedy, I'm sure, would have very credible reasons why the outburst, although people expected him to check his emotions, his temperament, to be something that is, closer to what we expect as political leadership. But of course, he had actually done that. The disciplinary committee found it appropriate to invite him so that he can send signals. But I doubt that they would actually take a very serious, decision that could actually, kind of hamper his chances, because they know that he's a force to reckon, and he has demonstrated through this particular, super delegate election, that indeed he's almost as if he's almost the anti-establishment, poster boy. So I doubt that it would actually have a very serious consequence for him. I think that it probably could be a caution, but not to suspend him, so to speak.
Now, let's talk about Hopeson Adorye. Now, he is reported to have allegedly accused one of the highest officials at the presidency of vote buying. Now, the committee has not called the person accused of vote buying to face disciplinary action. It is the accuser who is being called to face disciplinary action. What's your take on that?
I think that actually puts the committee in a very bad light, because, of course, it's not come from only Hopeson. A lot more people have made allegations. I have heard from quite a number of insider, sources that people, especially from diaspora, had been paid air tickets. People had been given an amount of about $2,000 for them to have come to vote in a particular direction. So I don't think that is actually coming from Hopeson alone. There are quite a lot of people that hold that view that this particular election had been heavily influenced by resources coming from a particular direction. So it means that if you have to invite Hopeson for having alleged that a very senior member of the government had actually made payment, it's fair to see the committee first investigating that allegation, investigating allegations that many people have leveled against the procedure, the processes, and then invite the parties, all parties, who have been mentioned or have mentioned names. Then you would be seen as being fair. But of course, if you have to invite only one side of the story, then of course it goes to say that people would be firm in their thinking that this election is heavily tilted toward a certain establishment.
Right. So at this point, these people some of them are going to be asked to present evidence of the allegations that they have made. Do you see, at least in the case of Hopeson Adorye, who we have heard make the allegations, do you see some difficulty in providing evidence to back the rather serious accusation that he's made?
Now, I'm not sure, but I would suspect that they have evidence. Obviously, Hopeson is not just a supporter, is not just a delegate, but he's also a representative of a certain camp, which means that he has a very deep access into the process. So I'm very sure that he might have some evidence based on which he's speaking. And I'm sure his team would be putting those evidences together. I hear they want to have a presser. I suspect they could, one way or the other, put evidences of their allegations forward. So I know that I can see where he's coming from. Perhaps he has some kind of evidence. That's why he could boldly say that. Because you can't just make those allegations, given the implications, given the veracity of the issue. I don't think that he would just make loose statement without any concrete evidences to back him, when he's asked to do so.
Right. So, I mean, there is also the looming issue of the positioning of the last two in order to determine who are the top five going into November. Does this disciplinary process have any impact on the quick resolution of this matter so that the campaigning with the delegates can begin in earnest? Do you see it having an impact here?
Yeah, of course. I think that the whole process is supposed to be seen as fair. And then, of course, those who are actually on the other camp, i.e., the two camps that they're supposed to, sort of arrange the new election for. I hear the committee is actually speaking to them in terms of trying to persuade one of them to back out, or so that they no longer have to organize, that particular election to save the party some resources. Obviously, if this disciplinary is seen as unfair, then it will be difficult, for the leadership to be able to do that persuasion. People will take very, political stands. They may not be ready to yield to any persuasions, coming from the leadership. And so, yes, the disciplinary procedure, if it's seen as unfair, it could actually have impact in terms of how or the extent to which the leadership can actually persuade individuals to play ball.
Let me ask you about the general brand of the NPP following some of these activities that unfolded on Saturday. Now, bear in mind, this was a very limited exercise. Less than 1,000 of their delegates participated in this. But even that couldn't be completed without reports of violence, without reports of vote buying, and general malpractice in terms of showing ballots and all kinds of irregularities. What does this do to the reputation of the NPP as a party?
Well, I think that generally speaking, and we've made these points over and over again, especially in the regime of this particular government, the brand NPP had been in trouble. In fact, all the kinds of names, all the kinds of qualities that we used to describe brand NPP had been in tatters, over the period. I have actually been on record to having said that if you look at the NPP that actually, touted itself as a collective in terms of leadership, and so the word, we have the men. Since this particular regime, that name or that description had ceased to be, the case because it has shifted to personality dominant. So in the past, NDC used to be personality dominant. NDC had rather taken the collective character of the NPP. NPP had swapped positions to be personality dominant. Now, again, when you look at what we call due process, of course, that had been in tatters, especially since the time of Kobby Agyapong and Afoko's suspension. There were no concrete, evidences to back the reason why they were suspended. So right from then on, due process, as we used to know the NPP, had actually been in tatters. And of course, if you look at this process, this particular process, I have said that if they really needed to prune, the kind of numbers that they said, they could have used other administrative mechanisms to do that. Of course, the processes that they organized in terms of this, super delegate, clearly demonstrates that they wanted a certain outcome. Of course, for this super delegate to sort of influence the bigger picture in November. So yes, the NPP's brand, I can tell you, especially from those of us who actually analyze political parties, who actually do political analysis, a lot of us think that the brand NPP has actually been in trouble. But of course, it takes, the general public to also believe that, and I'm sure a lot more people have the same thinking as we do.
Professor Kobby Mensah, thank you for this. Now, we also have we also have Michael Bwedi, who is with the anti-graft body Ghana Integrity Initiative, joining us right now. Mr. Bwedi, it's always a pleasure. Good afternoon to you. Now, everything that went wrong on Saturday was in one way or the other connected to vote buying, which is corruption. How do you take the party's response to these accusations made by some of their members about vote buying? Right. Michael, we can't quite hear you. I don't know if perhaps there's a need to unmute so that we can hear you clearly. So I'll ask the question again. If you can hear me, Michael, I'm saying that everything that went wrong over the weekend was related in one way or the other to vote buying, which is corruption.
Hello?
Yes, there you are, Michael. We can hear you now. Did you hear the question, or shall I repeat it? Right. So the question I'm asking is this. Everything that happened, that went wrong on Saturday, was related to vote buying, which is corruption. The party's response to this is to invite those who made the accusations, the accusers, to face the disciplinary hearing. What is your take on this? Is this sufficient action by the NPP? Right. We're working to fix the connection with Michael Boedi of the Ghana Integrity Initiative so that we can hear his views on what transpired on Saturday. Several reports of vote buying, of showing of ballots, which tends to be an aspect of vote buying. That is the validation that some voters would do in order to ensure that their vote can be paid for, according to the allegations that have been made. Do we have Michael Boedi? Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you. It's a pleasure to have you. I wonder if you heard the question. I don't mind repeating it if you didn't.
Oh, that would be great. I missed it. If you can repeat it, I'll be very
Excellent.
grateful. And good afternoon to your listeners and viewers as well.
Indeed. So, Michael, this is what I'm asking. Everything that went wrong on Saturday is related in one way or the other to vote buying, which is corruption. The party's response to this is to call those making the accusation to come and face the disciplinary committee. I'm asking whether, as a watchdog for anti-corruption, whether you think the party's actions are appropriate and sufficient.
Well, based on the principle of he who alleges must prove it, I think that there's nothing wrong with asking those to appear before the disciplinary commission. It doesn't automatically translate into the fact that they are going to be disciplined. It probably could be that they are asking them to offer sufficient information for further investigation. That said, I think that some of the allegations that were also made require a lot more investigation. I mean, to allege that somebody is buying votes after the person has voted, or somebody is giving money to people after the person has already voted, I mean, it requires a lot more investigation than just taking it at its face value. Let us generally condemn vote buying as a very one. It's a moral wrong to the whole voting process. Two, it is wrong, and the criminal code talks of it speaks against it in no uncertain terms. So it is wrong. It is criminal. It violates the principle of free and fair election. That said, I think that those who allege it must help the process of investigation so that we can nip that in the bud. We are now doing the party primaries, so it is important.
Right. I think we have issues with Michael's signal. But we do have Yao Boabinga Samoa, who is a spokesperson for the Alan Tremantin campaign. Mr. Boabinga Samoa, it's a pleasure to have you. Maybe we'll start with the latest action, the disciplinary action, and then we'll proceed from there to issues pertaining to the Tremantin campaign. So 6 individuals have been asked to go face this disciplinary committee. Do you feel that these 6 individuals being questioned in this manner will satisfy the concerns that your camp raised on the day?
Thank you very much for having me, and a hearty good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. Frankly, until they do their work, I'm not in a position to comment on the question you have asked me. How can I determine satisfaction otherwise when the work hasn't been done?
No, I'm asking whether the individuals who are being called, if they are the specific individuals to speak to your issue.
And the party has called them. So let the party find out from them what the party thinks the infractions are and which the party wants to investigate. Let's look at the party process.
Were any of these 6 individuals involved in the issues you were complaining about?
No.
Right.
That is a different matter, yes.
So that's what I'm interested in. So with the issues you complained about, particularly the beating of one of your polling agents, has the party taken any action to look into that?
We are submitting a formal report on that, and I believe the party will take action.
Now, I was speaking to a political marketer earlier who feels that for 955 of your delegates to engage in such a limited exercise and still have it fraught with, such issues, including violence, doesn't speak well for the brand NPP. How do you respond to that?
It depends on what the party seeks to portray, and probably that's why they set up this process to question themselves, because right from the beginning, the trust of the interventions that the aspirants were seeking was to ensure that we develop an environment free from intimidation and inducement. That we had rules specifically to create spaces for delegates to enjoy their mandate in freedom, demonstrate that there was a problem. And the problem that all of us were working towards was to eliminate fear, intimidation, and inducement. So at the end of the day, if we put lovely provisions on paper and then some aspirants choose to flout those provisions, then it's important that the party steps up and demonstrates that it's ready to ensure that its image is kept sacrosanct. Originally, if I'm not to go too far back, we asked that this be conducted in one place. 1,000 people wasn't beyond our logistical capacity, and that would give you a trim and compact opportunity to manage yourself well. When the party chose to decentralize it into 16 regions, I remember telling the world that whatever happened would be a direct reflection on the image of the party. And therefore, today, if we finished and a couple of incidents, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever number of incidents, and the party has seen fit to quickly look at those incidents, then clearly they are conscious that they need to show up the brand.
Now, let's talk about the Chairman Ting campaign. We've seen the statement that was issued following the outcome, the announcement of the results. And in there, Mr. Chairman Ting says that there will be a further announcement about the way forward. Does this suggest that there is possibly some decision to be made about whether Alan Chairman Ting will be continuing in this process or not?
It suggests exactly what he says, that Mr. Chairman Ting will be speaking to his supporters, to the party, to Ghana as a whole. Ghana has an interest in the process that's going on in the NPP, and he's not a marginal candidate. Many people expect him to comment on the process, even though, rightfully so, it's a mere administrative process. It doesn't determine politically who is viable to lead this party. But then, now that it's over, it's clear that he has to say something, particularly due to what happened with his agents in the Northeast, where there was a deliberate effort to make sure that he was deprived of a vote. And to achieve that end, an illegality was being perpetrated. Ballots were being shown against the rules we had all committed ourselves to, and the party had instead the police and the EC should enforce. Against all odds, that happening, his agent was beaten in order to push him away for those ends to be achieved. And they were achieved. The result shows that Mr. Chemati didn't make even one vote in that region. It wasn't the only region they tried to do those things. So the point is that you have a traumatized person who supports Mr. Chemati in the pursuit of legitimate duties within one family, the New Patriotic Party family, having an internal election. Somebody found it fit, somebody found it neat to traumatize a member of the party on its legitimate duty of protecting the interests of the party, because it was the party's rules he was enforcing. So I think Mr. Martin feels that he must say something, not only about this incident, but about the general conduct of the party and ourselves in participating in this process. However, he has also acknowledged how far God has worked and walked in his path ahead of him. He has acknowledged the work of the elections committee, and he has acknowledged the ladies and gentlemen who voted for him to be part of the fight, because this was a selection. This was not designed to look at placement or numbers achieved. It was a mere selection for five. It wasn't a selection. Wouldn't be having a runoff between two people who got 9 votes each. So the purpose is to select 5 people. It's not about the placement or the percentages or the numbers who voted. So Mr. Chemati will speak to his supporters. He will speak to the party. He will speak to Ghana.
Now, I hear you say that he will be speaking to give his views about these events that have occurred. But if I can quote the 5th paragraph of the statement, it says, the A4P campaign coordination team is currently analyzing the results of the special electoral college election. And in the course of this week, I will deliver a public broadcast on the way forward for my campaign.
Exactly.
This sounds to me like the question of whether or not he will continue in this process is being considered. Is that correct?
Mr. Youngson, you are a journalist. That's your opinion from your reading.
Oh, it's my question.
My opinion from the reading, and I'm part of the process, is that Mr. Chemati will give a broadcast. You can't begin to presume what will be in the broadcast or the intent of the broadcast.
That's why I'm asking. I can't presume. That's why I'm asking you.
I'm not in a position to tell you beforehand. The broadcast will happen.
Very well. Now, you say that this exercise was not really to rank them in any particular order. It's not about the numbers. But let me ask you this in all fairness: if Alan Kyerematen had emerged with the most votes, would that not have been a significant detail?
It was never going to happen that way. We all know it. It's not a day's event. An election is a process. And right from the beginning, all the talk. That's why I said the committee's focus was to try and provide a level playing field free from fear, intimidation, and inducement. Why was I saying that? Because there was a real, genuine perception and substantive information that the election was going to be heavily influenced. And that is why we focus on making sure that influence will not mar the election. So Mr. Chemati is not thinking about being first or second or third or fourth or last. There were those who really didn't want him to be in the fight. There were those whose machinations were aimed at making sure he didn't even make the fight. So those 95 gallant souls who put him in the fight deserve serious commendation.
Right. Mr. Boabe-Asamoah, I want you to stay with us because I'd like to get the take of Michael Bwedi on this. Michael, of course, as an anti-graft person, hearing the spokesperson of one of the contenders in this race accusing the party or some members of the party of influencing the vote and saying that it was obvious.
Mr. Yang, don't get me
sir.
wrong. I haven't accused anybody. Please, I haven't accused anybody.
Mr.
I
Boabia
said
Samoa.
our focus, please, please, I'm on the line. I haven't accused anybody.
Mr.
I said our focus was to ensure that we remove fear, intimidation, and inducement. I haven't said it was somebody and anybody. I haven't accused anybody.
Mr. Boabia Samoa, I think you did say that the outcome was obvious from the beginning. In fact, you even said everybody knows this.
Have I accused anybody by saying that?
But if you say the outcome is obvious from the beginning, is that
use
not...
my language. So use my language to Michael. Say that Mr. Samoa said the outcome was obvious from the beginning.
All right, let's do that. Let's do that. Mr. Boedi, you've heard one of the spokespersons of the spokesperson of one of the candidates saying that the outcome was obvious from the beginning. For an electoral exercise to be adjudged as such, that the outcome is obvious from the beginning, what does this do to the anti-corruption credentials of the NPP?
The sad part is, with all this process, is that the political parties hurt themselves and then they turn around to cry. And sadly, their integrity deficit is escalated to affect the nation when we get into the national election. So there would always continue, we will continue to have disaffection, we will continue to have dissatisfaction with outcomes of results when we don't work hard to promote the integrity of the process. And that is what plays out every now and then. And it always eventually plays out at the national elections. So we will, now the fashion is that we go to court, which is good, but we can avoid this when we make sure that, the integrity of the elections are upheld. What is it that we want to win by all means, through fair or foul means? I think that the parties are not doing themselves a lot of joy, a lot of good, and they are not doing the nations a lot of good. And so we must begin to learn lessons from there. Today, it is the electoral primaries of the internal election. Next year, it will be the national elections. Are we not seeing this mirroring itself at the national level? It always plays out. It always starts at the internal primaries and plays out at the national level. Sadly, innocent people lose their lives. Innocent people get maimed. How long are we going to continue with this? It's a question the political actors must ask themselves. And most people who are observers have their hearts bleeding, because when we hear these things, I mean, you are only electing or selecting 5 candidates to go for, and then to start the process of selecting your candidate. How difficult is it to promote integrity, to ensure, to tell the ordinary Ghanaians that we have learned something in the past, but here again, you do things and then the things will come back and hurt you? Well, as for us, we can only observe them and watch. If it works well for them, fine. But we hope and pray that it doesn't cascade to the national level, so where innocent lives will be lost.
There are some who would argue that these things happen, unavoidable. You're dealing with a large number of people. Somebody is going to misbehave. The party's response is to bring in the disciplinary committee. Does that mitigate the damage to their, credentials as a party that is not corrupt?
Well, there are two things. There are two reasons why we can speculate 2 reasons. One, it could either be that by voicing it out, you are soiling the image of the party. That's speculative. And it could also be that genuinely the party want to crack the whip and make sure that the right things are done. And therefore, those who are alleging are being called to prove their allegations so that more disciplinary action or firmer action can be taken to forestall the occurrence. Whatever the reasons are, well, what anti-corruption agencies should call for, or we are calling for, is that let the transparency of the process, let there be transparency in the process so that at least the true integrity of the system will be promoted and would be seen to be promoted.
Mr. Boabe Asamoah, let me ask you directly. To your understanding, was there vote buying and influencing on Saturday?
To answer that.
I'm sorry, can you say that again, please?
I am not in a position to answer that.
Well, the member of your team who got beaten, according to your report, he got beaten because he raised the alarm when someone attempted to show their ballot.
Yes. That is fact. He showed the ballot. That is a fact.
Okay.
So when you say vote buying, he's showing the ballot. It is against the rules.
Right.
And he was assaulted for enforcing the rules.
There were many reports. There were a number of reports of people showing ballots.
Yes.
And the suggestion was that this is being done in order to prove that they voted one way or the other and justify some reward. Is that your assessment?
Really, for whoever those people were doing it on behalf of, it ruins whatever they believe they were seeking to achieve or have achieved.
Right. So I mean, I guess what I'm trying to find out from you is this: if you believe that the outcome was obvious from the beginning, if you believe that some people were showing their ballots, then is it the position of the Chairmantin campaign for which you speak that there was influencing, unlawful, illegal influencing going on Saturday?
It's not Saturday. I'm saying it's not an event which only started on Saturday.
Right.
I have told you that it is a process, and in that process, the Presidential Elections Committee, sitting in committee with aspirant representatives, the police, and the EC, brought out guidelines that were designed to stem intimidation, fear, and inducement. And that, if that was not a real factor, the concentration of the committee would not have been on crafting guidelines to ensure that every voter has freedom of conscience. So if you go back to the guidelines, we said, first of all, that no active government official, appointee, ministerial down to the last appointee, was going to be an agent, because we didn't want any voter feeling intimidated by the presence of a powerful person. We also said that no devices capable of taking pictures were to be taken into the room. The police were to scan everybody, which meant that if you intended to take a picture to show anybody, you were disabled from doing so, and that meant that that person inducing you or intimidating you to take a picture would be deprived of that opportunity. So you were free to take your own decision in the ballot box. The protocols we added on the 24th of August re-emphasized this and said that anybody who, in lieu of taking a picture, showed a ballot paper would lose that paper. The paper would be rejected and would not be put in the box. So all these guidelines were preempting the opportunity for intimidation, fear, and inducement. They were on paper. On this Saturday, implementation went a bit awry, to the extent that people still felt compelled, whether they were afraid, whether they were intimidated, whether they were induced, that they should show their ballot papers against the rules we had all made for ourselves. And therefore, I drew a distinction that having rules on paper and implementing them are two distinct things. At the end of the day, those who went through those instructions, maybe not all of them have been brought up before the party's disciplinary committee, but the party is going through a process to try and review those incidents at a disciplinary level. Let's see how it goes.
Do you believe these things were done to deliberately benefit one candidate?
We didn't do it. My candidate didn't do that. My candidate didn't induce. My candidate didn't intimidate. My candidate didn't do that.
Which candidate do you believe did that?
I am not in a position to determine that.
Okay, which candidate benefited from what happened?
Oh, the pictures that were being shown were that of the sitting vice president, the establishment candidate.
Do you believe these things were deliberately done to benefit the vice president?
His picture was the one that was being shown. They didn't vote for Allah and show Allah. Those who were showing the pictures had voted for the vice president, His Excellency the vice president, and they were showing that picture to the public, to the world, to confirm that they had voted for him. He is the establishment candidate. He has the support of the establishment. He has the support of the incumbent government, and they were showing the picture to demonstrate that they had voted for him.
Do you believe that this sort of thing will repeat itself in November?
That's speculative.
Yes, I know. I'm asking if that is the strategy with which the Allen campaign is proceeding. Do you believe it will happen again?
We are in a substantive situation. We are moving towards a process. We will not speculate.
Right. So you expect a level playing field in November?
We have already established a level playing field, which in implementation was heavily mismanaged in several places. It's an electoral process. We are alert. We are aware.
So that means you will expect a level playing field in November?
We established a level playing field for Saturday on paper. Implementation throws up its challenges. Let's see what happens on 4th November.
Okay. Michael Boydi, at this point, with November looming for whichever five end up remaining on the list, what advice would you give to the NPP to ensure that this sort of thing is not repeated, and to, if you like, corruption-proof the process as much as possible?
Right. Could you permit me to make a more general statement? And the statement is simple. I mean, the seriousness of our country to fight corruption will be exhibited or will be shown in the type of candidates we select to lead the political parties. That is number one. Number two, if there is any candidate who cannot win election fairly, free of corruption, the person is not fit to lead this country freely, fairly, and devoid of corruption. Your moral integrity or your moral capacity to fight corruption is weakened through the process of your election. And therefore, you cannot appropriate and reprobate at the same time. You cannot say that you want to fight corruption when elected, when your process of election is tainted with corruption. Thank you.
Thank you. Boabi and Samuel, I'd love the last word from you. And this is about, in particular, Hopeson Adorye, who I'm sure you've seen the videos of him making certain rather strong accusations of vote buying against very senior members of the presidency. But in that same video, he's heard saying that everybody paid, just that some people paid a lot more. Is that a statement that you identify with?
Political operative in this country. He has capacity to observe and make conclusions for himself. He is also not a stranger to the media scene. I think he will acquit himself well before the disciplinary committee.
Right. So you do align yourself with the claim that he made?
Mr. Adorye is a senior member of this party. He is, and in fact, he was the agent for the Alan Martin campaign at the party headquarters polling station. In his own capacity, he has ability to observe. He's been part of this party for years. And he is not a stranger to the media team. I believe he will acquit himself very well before the disciplinary committee.
Right. Is it not a concern for your campaign that he actually alleges that your campaign also paid delegates?
Mr. Adorye will acquit himself very well before the disciplinary committee.
Okay, so how is the party taking that particular admission that he made?
I am not in a position to determine what the party is taking.
Forgive me, how is the campaign team taking that?
He has made assertions that have gone before a disciplinary committee. He is going before the disciplinary committee. I think he deserves the opportunity to be heard before that committee in his own behalf.
Right. Is the campaign team itself looking into this claim that you also paid delegates?
The young thing, we have a committee that's sitting, reviewing the election that has just gone past. I believe that Mr. Shemakin will deliver a broadcast within the week, following the committee sitting.
I want to thank you very much for your time. Yao Boabeng-Asamoah is the spokesperson for the Allen campaign team. You also heard from Michael Buedi, who is with the Ghana Integrity Initiative. Now, let's stick with politics for a little bit. Insensitive and ill-considered. That is how the National Democratic Congress Disability Desk describes the Electoral Commission's decision to register new voters at only district offices across the country. The group says the EC failed to take into consideration persons with various forms of disability who will have to travel long distances to access registration centers. Joining me now on Zoom with more is the National Coordinator of the NDC's Disability Desk, Frederick Asso. Mr. Asso, thank you for your time. Let me just inquire, have you officially petitioned the Electoral Commission on this?
And then good evening to your cherished listeners, viewers across the globe. Yes, we're putting up the document to send to the Electoral Commission, hopefully close of tomorrow, sorry.
Right. What would be your preferred accommodation? What would you prefer the EC to do to cater for those with disability?
Yes, it seems in this country, when we are taking policies, decisions, we leave out some section of vulnerability or persons who are vulnerable, which is persons living with disability, the aged, women. And in this case, looking at Electoral Commission's decision to embark on this limited registration, persons with disability, we are going to lose this great opportunity looking at where and the centers where they want to do this registration. The Electoral Commission came out that they want to do this registration in their district offices, which is 261 districts. And persons with disability are across this country. Just the recent census, they said we are about 12.8%, which always we say it is not true. But looking at this number, we have a sizable number that if the district the Electoral Commission will go ahead to do the registration in their district offices, will disenfranchise persons living with disability, because we are already in having economic crisis in this country, and persons with disability are not left out. It's hard coming out, getting money, traveling, etc. And persons with disability to travel from their homes to the district offices, which sometimes or some of the places you have to go with 2 or 3 times in a car before you get to those offices. And as a visually impaired, if you go in, you have to go with a guide and somebody who will go and then guarantee you, because most of us are not having the Ghana card to go alone or with only just our guides to do this registration. So definitely, you have to look for a guarantor, 2 guarantors. Go with them to the office. That guarantor is not going to do anything. So you are asking him to lead you to go and guarantee you to get your voter's ID card. So you have to take his cost. So you're going to pay for 2 people, pay for yourself and your assistant or your guide to go there. Somebody sitting in a wheelchair will do same, and then we even pay for his wheelchair that he sits in to go to the center, because drivers charge the wheelchair also when they put it in the car. A sign language interpreter or a deaf person has to go there with sign language interpreter. So all these things are going to endanger persons living with disability or persons with disability to go have the access to register. So in this case, we are calling on the Electoral Commission to come down, if not all the polling stations, at least Electoral Commission have 6,000 electoral areas. And those 6,000 electoral areas, at least a constituency or a district can get more than 5, which can be close to our abode. You see, so this is something that is very, very disturbing persons with disability in terms of this registry.
So, Frederick, my question was, what is your suggestion to the EC? What should they do to accommodate those with disability?
Yes, our issue is that we want them to come down. If they can't come to the polling station, then they should go to their electoral areas, which is about 6,000 plus electoral areas. And then that will be close to every individual to have access to register. Right. Than going to the district offices, which is 261.
Okay, so what you're saying is it should be further decentralized. The exercise should be further decentralized so it gets closer to those with disabilities. Mr. Aso.
Exactly.
Okay, but Mr. Aso, do you believe that by not catering for those with disabilities, as you have illustrated that they have not, does this go to the disadvantage of one party over the other? Or is it a general concern that you have?
We are speaking for everybody. We are not speaking for only NDC, though, because if you go to the center to register, you wouldn't know who is an NDC member, a CPP member, a PNC member, NPP member, or not. But we have come out as just an NDC disability desk, speaking for all persons living with disability.
Very good. So
including Ghanaians who are also crying. Because if you watch the airspace, you could see the civil society, everybody is crying that EC decentralize the election. So we are not saying this for only NDC members, but we are saying this to all persons living with disability, including Ghanaians and able people as well.
Right. Okay. So are there any timelines in your communication with the EC? By when do you expect them to take action on this?
Yes, we're giving them 7 days to look into this issue because they said they are going to start the registration on the 12th of September, which is very close.
So that's 7 days starting from today?
To look into this situation.
So that's 7 days starting from today. Very good. Mr. Frederick Aso, I thank you very much for your time with us this afternoon. That's Frederick Aso. He's with NDC's Disability Desk. There's so much more to come on The Pulse. Don't go anywhere. Grab yourself a cup of tea and come right back here in a few minutes. Welcome back. Now, one of the flagship programs of the current administration is Planting for Food and Jobs. It's one of the most popular programs, but has suffered several setbacks, such as fertilizer supply, challenges among others. Now, there's a new man at the helm at the Agric Ministry, and this morning he led the launch of the refreshed, rejuvenated program, Planting for Food and Jobs 2. It was launched in the northern region, capital, Tamale, And we will be getting some images from there. But in the meantime, let's try and understand this better. Kojo Braces with our Agric desk. He joins me now. Kojo, so planting for food and jobs too. How is it evolved from planting for food and jobs 1?
For every policy, once you are implementing it, you will see the challenges in it and how to correct it. I think that's what they've seen. They've seen that there are some teething problems with the policy, and they need to correct it. So one major thing with it is that the planting for food and jobs 1, government was giving monies to input suppliers and the stakeholders to ensure that the thing goes on. This time government says, well, it's not sustainable. That in the past year we spent, I think it was 3 billion. What is there to show? So now they've changed it and now allowing the financial institutions to come in to help. So what government is going to do is to give guarantees to the banks that, okay, this is an input supplier, Kojo. We guarantee that whatever you give him, we will help him pay back.
Right.
So the banks will give that loans to the input suppliers. The input suppliers will give their input, so seeds, fertilizers, insecticides, what have you, to the people, we call them aggregators. The aggregators would have agreement with the farmers that, okay, Kojo Yankson, I'm going to give you all of the things you need to farm, including the provision of mechanization, so irrigation, the tractors and what have you to prepare your land. I'll provide them. When you are done and you harvest your crops, I'll come for the equivalent of the money I spend on your production in kind. So I don't want you to give me money, but I want you to give me produce. So when they take the produce, the aggregators take the produce, they will then also take it to the warehouse. The warehouse will be certified by the Ghana Ghana Standards Authority, the Food and Drugs Authority. And then from the warehouse, the off-takers. So for the off-takers we have, they will put the thing on the screen so that viewers can also see it. So for off-takers, we have the National Buffer Stock, NAFCO. We have the breweries, we have, the companies that need the produce. So if it's maize, the companies that need them will come for them. Now, when they come for the produce, so that's how it is. The input supplier will supply to the aggregator. Yeah. The aggregator supplies it to the farmer produce, and the aggregator will go for in-kind, so produce. And then the aggregator will take it to the warehouse, and then the off-takers will come for them. And the off-takers have 24 hours to make payment into the bank account. So they are working with some financial institutions. And when they make it, then the banks will also pay the input supplier. The aggregator will get percentage of whatever it brings in. So the bank will pay that, and then they pay the mechanization stuff. So that's how
a whole value chain has been created here. Now, you said in there that the aggregators are now going to take responsibility for providing things like irrigation and mechanization. What does this say for some of the peripheral government initiatives like One Village, One Dam?
So, if it's going to be provided by the Ghana Irrigation Development Authority, they also charge for the services rendered. These services will be paid for by the aggregator, not the farmer.
Right.
So as a farmer, all you need is your land. From land preparation to planting to maintaining it, whatever you need to maintain it, to harvesting, all of those processes will be supported by the aggregator.
What are the goals? What goals have been set? Are there any annual figures that they are aiming to achieve?
Okay, so they want to increase, crop yield, so that if for anything at all, in about 2-3 months, can we be food sufficient? At the end of the day, the goal is to have food safety or food security, as we do say. So they believe that if you support the farmer and there is an intermediary who is going for the produce and not money, the country will be able to store as much as we can to support the country in times of need, so that one, they will control food inflation. Well, it's something they are looking forward to. They think that the inflation, the food inflation has been quite terrible in the past, and that if they use this model, they can keep that under control, make food available for all of us to eat, and to ensure that people can go into farming more. Now, you don't have to be scared about what capital will you need to go into farming. All you need is to have access to a land The rest will be catered for by this policy.
Is there any targeting going on? Are they targeting particular crops, particular produce? For example, are they aiming to substitute any imports like rice?
Yeah. So they have target crops for this policy. Cereals, we have rice, there's maize, there's sorghum, there's millet. These are the ones they're targeting. When it comes to tuber, that's root crops, they're looking at yam and cassava. They're also looking at, let me refer here. Okay, so they're looking at, for vegetables, tomato, pepper, or onion. You heard it. When this Niger issue came, look at how much the onion traders take to Niger every week. So the ministry wants to get farmers to grow more onions. I mean, I've spoken about cassava, yam, and plantain. They're also looking at poultry. You know, the poultry industry has the potential to create over 1 million jobs. But what have we done? Our poultry industry has collapsed. Now, they think that through this project, they can revive it. So, for example, if, the farmer grows the maize, the aggregator goes for it and is in the warehouse, the poultry farmer can have some of the maize to prepare the feed, because in the poultry industry, feed is one very critical thing. So if they have it, then they can grow more. There's also talk of, having the importers of poultry product to agree to how they can seed some of the, the import that they do to the local farmers, so that the poultry industry will also, be revamped, because they think that once we are importing, we are creating jobs for some people in other jurisdictions. So that's one thing they also do. I've spoken to you about rice, maize, soybean, and sorghum as some of the things. So these are the target areas for this project.
So the new Agric Minister, Brian Agyapong, is seeking to change the business model here. The banks are now going to be lending directly to the farmers with a guarantee from government. Now, we know that in the past...
maybe someone may not understand you, not directly to the farmer, but to the input supplier.
Right.
So the farmer, as for the farmer, all you need is your land. And then when you say, I have the land, the input supplier won't even come to you directly. He would go through the aggregator, because at the end of the day, the aggregator is the one that has contract to do the farmer.
Right. So
he will be coming for the produce. So everybody is insulated in a way. So the input supplier has supplied you, me, the aggregator, and he's expecting that I've supplied him some 200 million worth of input. At the end of the day, the bank would pay me directly, so that the farmer doesn't, you know how some farmers are. Sometimes you give them, and it becomes problematic when they want to go sell and pay back. So now the government says we've experimented with it. It didn't work. So now when you do it, the bank will get the payment from our suppliers, and they will pay you directly.
All right. Let's listen to the Agric Minister, Brian Agyapong, when he launched this second phase of the initiative.
For Food and Jobs Phase 1 to food security and resilience, with a focus on the entire value chain. Mr. President, you also demanded a turnaround of the tree crop subsector, with a focus on the cocoa farmers' share of the cocoa revenue. And finally, you demanded a drastic import substitution program directed at reducing our over-reliance on food imports. On assumption of office, a thorough analysis of the sector revealed huge potentials, which, when well exploited, could lead to the achievement of the objectives set by His Excellency the President. Our assessment of the PFJ Phase 1 also confirmed that a lot of successes had been achieved in the areas of utilization of fertilizer, acceptance and adoption of improved seeds, as well as the adoption of good agronomic practices by farmers. It was also established that if we could properly utilize the existing irrigation schemes deployed by government, we will significantly improve food production for some critical crops such as rice, onion, and tomato. For example, Mr. President, your government, having committed over 1.2 billion Ghana cedis for irrigation infrastructure in the northern regions alone, I see no justification for the current state of high import of vegetables from the sub-region, in spite of the huge potential for all year-round production. Mr. President, in a recent meeting with the onion importers plying the Niger route, it was disclosed to me that on average, an amount of $2 million was spent weekly to import onions. I deem this as an embarrassment and a needless drain on our scarce foreign exchange. It was, however, refreshing to me when they disclosed their willingness to convert their import trade to local production and trading on our irrigation schemes. Mr. President, when it comes to the production of rice, the data shows that it has improved from 667,000 metric tons in 2016 to 1,190,000 metric tons in 2022. Unfortunately, more than half of the paddy we produce is shipped out of the country, depriving local processors of access to raw materials. Indeed, we recognize the unavailability of large processors with the financial wherewithal to procure and process the paddy. This we shall fix. Mr. President, the above are examples of the potentials and bottlenecks that can easily be harnessed to the benefit of our food security and resilience agenda. Mr. President, in dealing with the wider potentials, the Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2 has been designed as a bold, innovative, and comprehensive approach to tackle head-on the hurdles on our food security journey. The underpinning model, which is the input credit system, will solve a number of critical challenges, namely access to credit, quality of agro inputs, the unstructured markets of our agricultural produce, and low mechanization, among others. Indeed, when we rolled out the program in full, one will no longer need to mobilize upfront financing for land development and preparation, as well as seeds and fertilizer. This is very important. Mr. President, land development, seed, and fertilizers constitute about 80% of production cost. I make bold to predict that with the new slogan for agriculture going forward will be PFJ 2.0, to wit, all you need is access to land and all other things shall be added. Mr. President, the following crop budget analysis, using rice as an example, puts this in perspective. A farmer requires at least 40,000 Ghana cedis for the development of 1 hectare of land. Land development, 40,000 Ghana cedis. The farmer will also have to spend a minimum of 5,975 cedis per hectare on agro inputs and an additional 3,375 on other farm activities, including labor. For a new farmer intending to crop 5 hectares, that will mean raising an amount of 246,000 Ghana cedis, 246 Ghana cedis.
Right, so that was Brian Agyapong. He's the Agric Minister, launching PFJ 2.0. All right, let's work out the impact of this new initiative. Dr. Charles Nyaba joins us. He's the president of the Peasant Farmers Association of Ghana. Dr. Nyaba, it's always a pleasure. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Kojo.
All right, well, let's get to it. PFJ 2. I know how you feel about PFJ 1. Are you optimistic about its reincarnation?
Yeah. I do, and I think my members do. We have a high expectation because if you look at most of the challenges we face with the PFJ 1, per what we were told with the PFJ 2, those challenges are addressed. Access to credit is one of the major challenges facing farmers. Now, you look at the PFJ 1, the concentration was only supplying farmers with subsidized fertilizer and seed. And subsidized component was even negligible. It was not actually making much difference between the market price and that of the subsidized price. Now, the other challenge we face with the PFJ 1 has to do with quality of fertilizer and seeds that were supplied under the PFJ 1. most of the contractors that were engaged under the PFJ1, they were just supplying anything. After all, whether farmers take it or not, they also get payment from Ministry of Finance. So it was a serious challenge, and some of us submitted recommendation to this minister and recommended that the PFJ1 should actually be reviewed. Land development is one area that is discouraging youth and women from going into new farming because, just like the minister mentioned, per my own engagement with land developers, to develop an acre, you need not less than 10,000 to do just 1 acre. So if you're a new farmer who don't have anything and you don't have access to credit, how are you going to develop 5 acres of land to be able to farm? Now that will be catered for. So for us, we are highly optimistic, and then we just hope that as he read, and then what we've seen in the document, when it comes to the implementation, it shouldn't deviate from that.
Right. Well, so what you have are expectations that this time around things will go differently. But do you see any lessons learned in Planting for Food and Jobs 2 from the errors of PFJ1? Do you see evidence that lessons have been learned?
Yeah, I think so. You know, when the PFJ1 started in 2017, it was smoothly implemented. Along the line, there were people who were not real farmers. They hijacked the whole process. So it was like whom you know, that you get contract to supply either seeds or fertilizer under the PFJ1. So if you look at the engagement that the current minister and his team are doing, I suspect that lessons have been learned. Because people who are not even belonging to the ruling government were engaged, were consulted. Real farmers who matters were consulted whether they belong to NPP party or not. And then if you look at the way it's open to allow farmers to select the kind of service provider that they want, that they feel that those service providers provide quality inputs, I think lessons are also learned, because it was very clear under the PFJ1, people were supplying inputs because they have favorites among those who are giving contracts. Contract sums were inflated, quality inputs were supplied, and no query. Farmers complained to the authorities that matter, and nothing happened. So to me, the beginning looks good, and I think that a lot of lessons from PFJ1 have been incorporated in the PFJ2. We will only wait patiently to see the implementation, whether we are able to continue that the implementation is done. And if that is done, I tell you, most of the challenges that are enumerated in the PFJ2 are what farmers are looking for solutions for. So if those things are done, I'm sure we'll be able to increase our yields.
Right. So do you have any targets? I mean, having heard what is available now as peasant farmers, do you have any targets, percentages by which you expect yield can increase?
Yeah, so if you look at if you take 2022, for instance, the yields were very bad. And it's bad because of increase in cost of production, supply of poor quality inputs to many farmers. In fact, farmers actually became demoralized. And it contributed to low supply of food, leading to food price inflation. So it will be very difficult for me to predict at the moment without doing any modeling to conclude that yields will increase by 20% or 30%, because yields increase depends on a number of factors. Inputs is one, which is within our control, but about 80% of our production is rain-fed. So even if all these factors are favorable or they are made available to the farmer, and the raining pattern is not favorable, it can also impact on the yields. Until we are able to incorporate irrigation scheme. With irrigation, I'm able to tell that if I do 1 hectare, I'll be able to get 40 bags, multi-bags of rice. But with rain-fed, if the rain doesn't favor you, you can do everything, and then you may not still get up to the potential yields. So for now, I don't think it will be right for me to conclude on prediction, but I think we are likely to to see improvement in our yields compared to PFD1.
Right. I want to say a big thank you to you, Dr. Charles Nyaba, President of the Peasant Farmers Association. Now let's talk about something colorful. It was a week-long festival that featured a meditative procession through the streets of Osu, the screening of movies, the display of artwork, drama, and more. The climax of the 2023 edition of the Chalewote Street Arts Festival was at the weekend, as thousands of Ghanaians trooped to the Black Star Square in Osu to participate in West Africa's biggest celebration of arts and culture. Maxwell Agbagba was there. Here's his report.
It's close to midnight, and beneath the moonless African sky, thousands of festival goers are still gathered at iconic Black Star Square. The intoxicating rhythms of Amanziba Nadbru's high life music fill the air. King Ayusoba is on stage, adding a unique flavor to the musical concert.
If you can start it, people that love you, you go make them. People want to see you, brother. They can see you. The whole world, the whole world.
There were more performances after him.
Me sweetie, me my dear, me baby, me coming dole ti apology. Hey, I want to my dole, bebo baba, hey, suma dole. Hey, mebo baba, hey, suma dole. Bebo baba, hey, my dole.
The festivities continue. Less than 100 meters away, Joy FM's DJ Black is on the turntables, treating patrons to some good music. Hosting alongside him is Lexus Bill. The two electrify the crowd. Patrons couldn't hold back their excitement. Earlier in the day, the streets of Osu came alive as various artists had the opportunity to showcase their talents. The Black Star Square was a canvas of creativity, with vendors selling African artifacts witnessing booming sales. One of the artists expressed how the Chalewote Festival is a platform that amplifies local
it depends
talent.
On the client. So the foreigners mostly they do understand artworks much. So when I'm selling this artwork for a foreigner, maybe it will be like $6,000.
$6,000?
Yeah.
For a Ghanaian or
for a Ghanaian, that would be like 30,000 Ghana cedi. Yeah.
The Chalewote Festival has become the big magnet attracting people from all walks of life here to the Osu Castle Gardens and also to the Black Star Square. People from politics, media, medicine, and all that you can think of. It is a festival of arts, culture, and entertainment, plus everything African. I'm excited to have with me here a Member of Parliament for Kolikloti, Senator Ajman Rollins.
But this means a lot, because this is certainly one way of reviving the activity, not just here but in Osu.
Yeah.
You know, Osu is a very old town with a lot of history, and this creates an opportunity where art, where storytelling meets the current generation and helps them to marry what they know about their various family histories to what we're doing now. So when people come to Ghana on their pilgrimage back home, as they retrace their ancestry, and they come to the Chalewote Festival, for example, and they come here to the castle and they go to the various old houses in Osu, or they go to the Black Star Square, there's a story that they can weave in with what they know that enriches the narrative more than what it's already been.
The Ghana Tourism Authority predicts that in 2023, over 1 million tourists will visit Ghana, and the Chalewote Street Art Festival is playing a significant role in achieving that goal. tourists from around the world have fallen in love with Chaliwati and the warm hospitality of Ghana.
Yeah. Seeing that lively environment that we're expecting to find, so let's see.
Yeah, so you're going to be here till evening, I'm sure?
Yeah, we will, yeah.
We will.
We'll see the live music and all that.
Yeah. How long have you been in Ghana?
1 month.
Oh, 1 month. What about you?
2 months.
2 months. Okay, great. Tell me, what do you love about Ghana?
The people, the friendly people, and the very good food.
And what kind of food? What's your favorite Ghanaian food?
Fufu.
Oh, you love fufu.
Red.
Where are you from? Which country?
France. And I'm from Germany.
Okay. Tell me, how long have you been in Ghana though?
It's been 5 weeks now.
5 weeks?
Yeah.
In Ghana. Okay. 5 weeks too?
4 weeks.
4 weeks. Oh, okay, great. Tell me, what do you make of the Chaliwati festival?
What we think about?
Yeah.
It's really colorful. It's really nice. Yeah, local fabrics are really beautiful. Yeah, I think so. But the painting, I think I prefer the painting.
Okay.
Yeah, all the
paintings. All the paintings.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And you?
What about you?
Oh, I don't know. I think I like everything.
Well, it's been quite eventful, hasn't it? I've certainly had a great time with you this afternoon. I'll leave you in the capable hands of LTS, but of course, there are more stories on myjoyonline.com. So make sure you keep your eyes peeled for all the updates over there. Until tomorrow, have a fantastic evening. My name is Kojo Yankson.